Hello again, this is Daniel Ritchie, the developer of Howler, and today I'd like to talk to you about a new feature in Howler 10, which is a feature we added to simulate the look of film stock from around the 1920s through about the 40s, and it was used a bit into the 50s as well, which is basically as they were transitioning from black and white into color, they went through a lot of different technologies that were quite interesting, really, if you like to get into this sort of thing. It is, well, we all know today how when you work in color on a computer, you use separate red, green, and blue channels to mix colors. We're all familiar with that. But back in the day of film, this was all pretty new, and they're still figuring out how they were going to do these things. And really, when you think about it, film as a medium doesn't really have channels. It's just a piece of celluloid with some silver and some other types of things on it, and it really wasn't channels to work with. So it's not like today where they have different layers of chemical compositions that are extremely scientific. They were still learning the process, still learning how to use this technology. And some clever people came along and really worked out how to use color in film. And like I said, they didn't have the channels in film, so somebody clever came up with the idea of a color model based on only two what we'd call channels today, or basically they could put two pieces of film together. Or one clever person decided they could use separate sides of the film. That would give you two channels basically to work with, and they had to find a way to make the entire color spectrum fit into just these two separate pieces of film, or these two pieces of two separate sides of a piece of film. And what they did was they would use color dyes to dye each side or each piece of film. And they came up with a model that worked pretty well. It omitted some of the color range. A good example would be to go back and Google films like 1925 Ben-Hur, where they used, I believe, a purple or a magenta and a sort of a green cast to everything. And it was really artistic in its way. But you'll see this a lot between the 20s and 40s and even into the 50s. Adventures of Superman, I think, had a few early color episodes that use similar technology. I could be wrong, but if you look at it, why was Superman's suit, cyan instead of blue? Well, they probably could not get that entire range. And if you look at some of those episodes, there's really no green in the episodes. So it's really worth being familiar with these old technologies if you ever need to make a period piece of film, or if you want something to gain that old-fashioned look, then this is really worth understanding and coming to terms with. And we've added a feature in Howler that lets you do some experimenting and really get some of these looks using pretty much the same techniques they used then, only not using film. Obviously, we're working in the digital medium here. But let's take a look at a few things we've done here. We've worked on we had this acorn from my student film at COC, which was called Birdball, and we've processed this. This was a film that was originally intended to be in the style of the about 1920s to 30s, or maybe even a little bit later. But it was done with that style in mind, and here we've processed it. And we've also given it a little bit more contrast as well. But you see we've lost a lot of colors in this transition, but it's also very artistic, and it also gives it that aged look. In the original, we had a lot of green in there and some oranges and all that. And then the final result, we mostly have some browns and some blue, a little bit of blue, a little cool color in there. But in those days, they would have had basically these limitations. They could only fit so much color into their palette because they were using these limited technologies, these dye-based film processes. So we've really gotten that look out of it. And again, I'll give another example here. A little place called Connie's in New Mexico, I believe. A place called Moriarty, New Mexico. Let's see. Second best hamburger I ever had. All right. Let's see. And here is the original. And here we've gone and used that 2-color process. And you can see it looks like the old-fashioned. If you've been around long enough, you might even remember things that had these odd color casts like this back in the old days. And one more example. Let's see. Here's the original flowers, and again, process. And you can see we've lost all of our green here and yellow. There's some orange in there, and you can almost imagine there's some green in there. But it's a limited palette. It has an artistic value, even though you're not getting the full color range. It really implies that there's a colorful world out there without really, if you remember Gilligan's Island, we always remember how vibrant the colors were at Gilligan's Island. We forget that there was a season that was completely in black and white. But if you look at the Warner Brothers stuff now, almost everything has been processed. So there's only a very limited number of colors. Take Harry Potter. Basically, all you have is blues and I don't know, a few other colors, or any horror movie. It's all blues, or any other movie is blues and oranges, So these are things to take into account. Really, movies are not filmed in full color anymore. They're filmed, but then they're processed to have a very specific color range that really changes the mood of the picture. It unifies the look of a picture. It's just not random things that happen. So this is a very useful thing to use in your work, and even if you're not going for a retro look, limiting a color palette is very useful and helps convey a mood. And that's all a little bit beyond the scope of what I'm talking about. But let's go ahead and use the filter once, just to get a feeling for it. And I'll start with this big fella here. Go into the photographic filters, and as I said, we had 2 channels. And they would use dyes and color filters and things to bring about these looks. I found that reds and blues work really well, or sometimes yellows. And I talked about Ben-Hur in 1925. They use sort of a greenish purple set of colors. There are a few presets here. That Ben-Hur 1925 preset is it'll start to get you in there. You usually have to tweak these a little bit to get the best range of colors. That does kind of start giving that green and purple cast. A little more useful for capturing flesh tones, though, would be the reds and blues, as you see here. And we'll tweak this a little bit, and we can almost reproduce the entire color range of that original photo to some degree. It is getting a little bit of a blue cast. I'm going to work on that some more. But like I say, we can almost reproduce the entire color range, because we're not really, the photo itself doesn't really contain the full range of colors. You'll notice that the helmet is turned almost green. If you think about Superman's suit being more green than blue, that would kind of prove to me that they were using a similar technology. And you can see we got a pretty good representation of skin tones. Almost no greens to speak of. The original, you can see the original has lots of greens in it in the back. Well, not lots of greens. This is Southern California, but you get the idea. So let's hit OK to that and compare this with the original. Store that. And this being the original, you can see the greens are much more vibrant here. But the skin tones are pretty good. We did capture some of that blue in there. It's getting a little bit lost. It's really turning it almost into a green. But anyways, let's see the new Cinemascopic filter coming to Howler 10. Great for capturing the looks of old photos, old film, especially between the 20s and 40s. Just one feature coming to Howler 10 available in January, hopefully. And thanks for watching again, and talk to you later.